Today we're talking about being a whole person. I want to start with this idea. If you're in the middle of a pursuit of God, you need to know that God is interested in your whole life. He's not just interested in your spiritual side. A pursuit of God will transform you into a whole person.
Yeah, let's look at Matthew 22, starting in verse 37. Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind."
And then it goes on in verse 39 and says this, a second command is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so when I take this passage, I think about how God wants to impact and transform the whole person. He wants to transform us emotionally. He says, you need to love yourself. He wants to transform us relationally because you need to love your neighbor. And most importantly, he wants to transform us spiritually because he says we should love God.
Okay, so let's unpack the emotional health piece here for a minute. This is about how you see yourself. Emotional health is seeing yourself how God sees you, no more and no less. It's having the courage to become self-aware and to lean into your own fears and insecurities. And there is nobody out there that hasn't had life experiences or maybe people in your life that said you weren't good enough or failures that made you feel like maybe you didn't have value. But the truth is, God says you have value. And so you need to step into those things that have caused you fear or angst or depression or insecurities and say, God says I have value. So I'm going to step into those things. I'm going to figure out why I feel those things and deal with them and let God release those things from you so you can do what God has planned for you in your life.
Yeah, in fact, we've got a whole page dedicated to emotions. If you want to do that with your group or mentor, I really recommend it because God is interested in your emotional health. And this is, I think, something every Christian needs to embrace, is that he wants you to be whole. Psalm 139 says, "O Lord, you have examined my heart and you know everything about me." And as followers of Jesus, we can step into our emotions and say, God, I want to be whole. I want to be healthy in this area. I want to learn how to love myself the way you love me.
Okay, so now let's look at the relational piece. This is about how you relate to other people. Here's the point. Relational health is truly loving the people around you and wanting the best for their lives.
Yeah, I love how it says it in Romans chapter 12, verse 9. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Tracy, who wouldn't want to be a part of a community of faith that really had this at the core? Instead of gossipy and backbiting, but it's people who look at each other and love each other. That doesn't mean you're perfect, because nobody's going to be perfect, but that you love one another and you put other people ahead of yourself.
Yeah, and that idea of taking delight in honoring each other, that you recognize that your words, your actions have consequence and can either help or hurt somebody else. And God wants us to be whole in the way we relate to others. And if there's hard conversations that need to happen and conflict arises because of something that's happened that's caused dissension or harm, then that's where the speaking the truth and love piece comes in. That God's not saying just roll over and be a doormat, but God is saying, hey, listen, if there's a truth that needs to be spoken to somebody, then do it in love.
Yeah, and we saw this in the last topic when we looked at John chapter 8. Jesus spoke the truth in love to that woman who was caught in adultery. He didn't judge her, but he also didn't let her go and continue to live in her sin. And this is how we should all be in community with one another.
Okay, so the last piece of this then is talking about our spiritual health. And there's no way that we're going to be healthy in our own view of ourselves and in our emotions or in our relationships if we don't have this spiritual piece right. This really is foundational. So here's the point. Spiritual health is letting Jesus fix the brokenness at the core of your being. So it's about submitting your attitudes and your actions to God so you can start living from the inside out.
Yeah, the reason that we're broken emotionally and relationally and physically and every other way, it's really a spiritual thing at the core. So Jesus fixes our spiritual problem, and then that leads to the health that we can have emotionally, relationally, and every other way. Now, we're going to talk about this more in the next few topics, but 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. If you're ready to really pursue God and learn how to trust Jesus for salvation, then you can go on to topic 4, 5, and 6. Take your time as you go through those topics.
But if you're sitting there with your mentor in your small group and you're like, I'm still thinking through some things and these introductory topics are really helpful for me, then just simply scroll down and hit the more intro topics, and there's a lot more options for you there. You can continue to choose some topics that are of interest to you, and then eventually move over to that topic 4 when you feel ready.